Dr. Anupama is the former dean of the Indian Institute of Astrophysics and the former president of the Astronomical Society of India, the first woman to head the prime association of professional astronomers in the country. She has significantly contributed to the establishment of the robotic telescope in Hanle and was also in charge of the Indian Astronomical Observatory in Ladakh. Thank you so much for being here today. So, first of all, what was the motivation for you to pursue a career in astrophysics? When did you know that this is what you wanted to do for a living?
Well, I wouldn't say that, I really was looking at a career in astrophysics from the beginning. I certainly knew that I wanted to pursue, in the science field and, do research. Basically, I was interested in doing research, and I did my MSc in physics. So the natural choice was to continue doing research in an area in physics. And astrophysics kind of happened, I would say, because I got into the Indian Institute of Astrophysics. And of course, I did try in other places, and I got into this place. And anyway, there's been no looking back. I really enjoyed, and I continue to enjoy my research in astrophysics. Yeah.
That's really great. And how did your family react when you displayed this interest, considering so few women work in STEM? It's unusual for women to be scientists in India.
My family has always been in favor of STEM, including the women in the family. My aunts had done one of my aunts has done a PhD in zoology, and another aunt was MSc in botany. And there's always been a very strong encouragement in the family for education. My cousins are all engineers. My sister did her MSc in botany, so it's like, STEM is nothing unusual. And women, like girls in the family, have always been encouraged to pursue studies. I think somehow that the atmosphere in the family was always that studies are important. It doesn't matter whether, your gender doesn't matter. It's always been like that in the family. Yeah.
Like STEM runs in your family, it's in the blood.
It definitely runs in the family, no doubt about it. It continues, in the next generation also.
That's really nice. And what was the process of choosing a college to study in after you decided that you wanted to do STEM? And how did your college experience further influence your career path?
I think it was kind of, a natural choice to try getting to the best colleges known for science. And I kind of did my schooling in 4 different cities, and so I completed my 12th in Aurangabad in Maharashtra, and then moved to Bangalore to do my undergrad BSc. And as I said, I just applied to the best colleges in Bangalore and got into one of them. So I mean, I don't think there was any kind of a second thought on which college or whatever, like something like that. It was a natural choice to choose the best one in science. And I think kind of lucky enough, because I had been scoring well. So I did get my choice of college. Yeah.
That is nice. And you're the first female president of Astronomical Society of India. So do you enjoy being a role model, or would you prefer just being recognized for your scientific merits?
I did not, I mean, I've not done my research or, kind of steered my career path to be a role model. If I'm considered a role model, I think it has just happened. I've just wanted to be a scientist and do good work and to be known as a good scientist. The main emphasis is on the science that I do rather than the other things. And the research, the development activity, whatever I do, I'd like to give it my best. Administrative roles happened, and I think I gave those also my best. So it's not like I try to steer myself, thinking that, yes, I should be a role model or something like that. No, I never did that.
You've had a long career in science. So what is it that kept you going?
My passion, the interest to continue, doing it. And, astronomy is kind of such an exciting field. There's always something happening in the field, in the research areas that you work in. There's always something new coming up, always new objects that you observe. And, with the technology improving, you have new detectors coming in. So new kind of, how should I put it? Better quality data, which means that you can, obtain better information. So you try, you start looking at things in a new way because your quality of the data has improved. That keeps your excitement. You're not doing the same old stuff day after day, you see. So it's like every object you observe, every object you study has got something interesting in it.
Yeah. It's like learning is a continuous process in this. Keep learning.
Yes, that's true. That's true. It is a continuous process and you keep learning. And, you kind of, the other major advantage, I think, in being in research or in academic is that you interact with the younger people.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is something which keeps you also energetic and young, mentally, if not physically.
Yes. So what did you gain from your experiences leading Growth India project and the development of the Indian Astronomical Observatory? Also, can you talk about the significance of these projects and why they are important in science?
Yeah, so the Indian Astronomical Observatory, it is an observatory which was set up by the Indian Institute of Astrophysics, where I did my PhD as well as, later on joined there as faculty. So my involvement in that observatory was initially in trying to characterize the site, that is, looking at the parameters of the site, like the weather, the sky conditions and all that, to see how good a site it is to set up an observatory. So that is how I began my involvement with that observatory. And then with the 2-meter telescope, which was installed there, I got involved in that, in the commissioning activity and what we call as a science verification. That is, when we build a telescope, we have certain parameters, certain requirements in mind, and the telescope is built according to those requirements. But we need to do some actual science observations to see whether it is meeting all our requirements or how best it is meeting the requirements. So this is what we call as the science verification. So I was involved in that activity, and also in the instrumentation aspect, in the commissioning and verification of the instruments. So that is how I was involved in that observatory in the initial years. And it continued. My involvement in the observatory just continued. And, finally, I also became the in charge of that entire setup. The growth project, it's an international collaboration to basically observe transients. That is, transients are objects which suddenly pop up in the sky and are bright for a short duration, and most of them fade rapidly. There are different types of transients. I work in that area. My main research has been in that field. So this international project is collaboration of scientists from several countries across the globe. And the the idea behind having such a collaboration is to have an almost 24-hour observation of transients. So the idea is that when it is daytime in some part of the world, it is night in the other part. So you can use the telescopes in the part of the world where it is night. And then, when the daylight begins over there, the other part of the globe, the night starts setting in. So you continue to observe these interesting objects because they're rapidly fading. So they keep changing their physical conditions rapidly. And some of them are so rapid that if you have, for example, a 24-hour gap, there would be a considerable change. And some of these objects are like unknown. You see, many of them are unknown objects. So you miss out something, you miss out a certain stretch of observing it, a certain period, then you lost that information as to what happens in that time. Right. So unless you observe more and more objects of a certain kind, you don't get the full picture. So you need, projects of such kind always require a large global collaboration. And growth is one such collaboration. So when we got into this collaboration, I thought that it would be good to have a dedicated telescope for the observations of these transients. It need not be a very large one. It's a small telescope, a 0.7 meter, but it's a wide field, which means it covers a larger area of the sky. And it should be robotic, so that, when we get the information about a transient, we should be able to latch onto it immediately if it is observable from the Indian Astronomical Observatory in Hanle. So that was the main intention of having this robotic telescope. And what has been very satisfying about that particular telescope, it's a small one, but it is producing excellent science. And what is more amazing is that the entire, making the telescope suitable for robotic observations was done by several students at IIT Bombay, and also some of the research students at IIE who were working in my group. So there have been several students at IIT Bombay, undergrads, and students doing their masters and PhDs who have been involved with that project and continue to be involved in that project.
It's really impressive. And this project is so cool, the way it works. It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So very random, but what are your favorite science books, movies, or podcasts? Do you have any recommendations?
Books, yes. I mean, I kind of used to read a lot of science fiction. A great fan of Asimov. Okay. And I mean, I just read any kind, frankly. Yeah.
Very diverse.
Yeah.
That's nice. There are many people who look up to you, but what about your role models? Did you have any role models growing up that guided you through your path?
There have been several, I would say, people I looked up to for various aspects, right? Not just my career, but the overall kind of. It's several people who have had influence within the family. Like my maternal grandfather, for instance, he's had a great influence on the way I grew up. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, my aunts who were in STEM, they have been, these are all people who have been kind of influencers at a very subconscious level, I would say. Not the kind of people who you can say, yes, you pinpoint and say, yeah, that was my role model. They've all been role models in a very subconscious manner. So this is from the family side. Of course, my parents, of course, I mean, without their encouragement and what they have done, I could never achieve what I have achieved today. Career also, there have been a lot of people whose works I have admired. my seniors at IAA. Actually, IAA has been one place where there have been a lot of women scientists, and one the very fact that these people were around there in the institute, and there was no difference in the way the way you interacted, whether it was a woman or a male or a female scientist. It's just a scientist. So I guess that very atmosphere around in the institute created something very different. And so these women were kind of observing, going to the observatory, observing in the night. And this was in the 80s. Okay. And so it was a natural thing that you just kind of looked up to them. You found them doing these things, so it's fine. It's very natural for us also to do it, the younger people who came into the institute. So that way, I think IAA has been a wonderful place in encouraging women scientists.
It's really nice to have an environment where it doesn't get overwhelming for you, as in you have the examples right in front of you.
Exactly, yeah.
What advice do you have for high school students that are interested in pursuing a career in astrophysics? How do you think they can learn more about it?
Well, for one thing, I think they are at the age, the era where there's an information overload. Right? If I look at the time when I was in school, the only way that we could get some information about new exciting science was actually through newspapers or some of these magazines. And it would be a small column. There were some science magazines where you could they were monthly kind of magazines where you could get information, but it's not like today where you have the information happening in real time. See, you have, for example, JWST launch. The entire launch, you could watch it in real time. These sort of things are so exciting, right? Even for a child to be watching that. And I remember as a child, we kind of heard on the radio the Apollo mission, about the Apollo mission. We just listened to it, but it was so exciting because we don't see it, but we hear, even that is like very exciting. So I think it's important to be aware of what is happening, and not also, I would say that, for example, children in the high school are still at a very young age to, they are at an age where they should not be kind of determining their career path right then. They are at an age where they should be exploring all possibilities, widening their horizons, exposing themselves to whatever best they can get exposed to. Because that is, what helps you decide what you want to do in the future, instead of having a narrow idea of, I just want to do this and only this. Yes, there are certain people who are very focused. That's very nice. But I would also tell that even though you're focused in a certain area, don't narrow your vision. Widen your horizon. That's extremely important.
That's very good advice, because people become too committed to one thing and then they fail to acknowledge that there could be so many other things that they can try.
Exactly, yeah.
There's so much to learn in this field, as you mentioned. So as learning never stops in science. So how do you manage to remain updated with all this overload of new knowledge?
As a scientist, we have several avenues through which we can get information and be up to date. The research publications, there are several databases and archives where people put out their publications either as soon as they submit it or it is being accepted. So you keep, and this information comes out to you, once you subscribe to these, it comes out to you on a daily basis. So you keep yourself updated that way. And of course, one has to keep doing a lot of reading also to keep oneself updated. It never stops.
Yeah. What unanswered questions about the universe excite you the most?
There are a lot of unanswered questions. Like, what excites me really is trying to understand these transients, these objects. There are many unknowns which come up, and even if we think there is a certain class of objects that have been observed, people have been observing over decades, over centuries, still, whenever there is a new such object, you find something exciting out of it, right? And it is actually, when you study several of these objects, all build up to answering the big questions in science. So I would say that each person has found their own niche area where they are in what they're interested in. It may not appear to a common man as that, this is something which is very exciting. Like, for example, people talk of studying black holes. Not everybody studies black holes. But if you talk of astronomy, most people think of black holes, right?
Yeah.
But that is not something everybody does. That is no doubt interesting, but there are other things which are equally interesting.
Yes.
And in fact, there are other things, when you understand those, you can probably understand black holes better. So it's actually, everyone is doing their little bit. So I guess each one of us is excited in doing what we are doing. I would put it that way. I mean, I don't think I answered your question very focused and specific, but yeah.
It's good you didn't pick up that fancy ideas that most people do, like black holes, and rather than something that you're really interested in. Because yes, again, people mostly go to those fancy ideas before even understanding what they really are. What do you think is the best part of being an astrophysicist?
I really enjoyed my visit to the observatories. Okay. And I think, being an observational astronomer has taken me to some really fancy places that most people don't go to. And that, I think, has been the best part. Of course, apart from the science aspect, forgetting that, if you look at the other thing, I think that has been the best part in my life. I've gone to such exotic places, all because I have been, pursuing a career in astronomy.
Like, you have so many jobs, you're an explorer, all because of being this scientific job.
Yeah, see, we go to the observatories. I mean, these are located at some of the best places, and for example, the Indian Astronomical Observatory is located in Ladakh, such a beautiful place, a high altitude location. I think on a daily basis, I wouldn't be going there, but because I'm an astronomer, because I was involved in that project, I kept going there, several years, for decades. So I don't think otherwise I would have done. Maybe I might have gone as a tourist for a day or two or something like that. But, not sure. But, that's what this profession has helped me do. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Dr. Anupama, for sharing your experiences. I learned a lot from it, and I hope my audience did too.